Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy's Social Work Podcast. I'm so glad y'all are here. Come on in. We have some good topic today. We have a good topic. I can't wait to have this discussion. This is one that's really dear to my heart. It's trauma. It's the stress reaction in the brain. But then I'm going to take it another way, and we're really going to do some introspection and do a little digging within ourselves and do a little self-improvement. I got a couple tips at the end too. So keep watching until the end so that you can get the Dr. Toy tips. And I do have a question that I will read called Ask the Therapist. And thank you for sending in your question. So don't forget, Ask a Therapist segment. You can send in your question straight to me at toyaj@pitt.edu. I had to make sure I remember my email because sometimes I don't know whose email I'm giving out. So remember that, or through the Qualtrics link, which will be anonymous and they'll be provided to you. Also, put your phone to the screen, scan that QR code, and find out when the podcast will air again. Follow me on my social medias and hit me up at University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work as well. If you want more information about Pitt School of Social Work, and I know you do, look at our website at www.socialwork.pitt.edu. Learn about the MSW program, the BASW program, and the PhD program. You'll just find some interesting things that we're doing, and you'll love it. Continue to come and watch every first and third Thursday at noon, the Social Work Podcast, Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. That's me, y'all. Okay, let's get into it. I couldn't wait to talk to y'all about this. Sometimes I'll do these solo soapbox moments and really have an opportunity to just talk face to face with y'all and just impart, what I know and what I think is helpful. And so I really want to talk about trauma and stress reactions. But before we talk about that, we have to really talk about how it comes about. And so we know we have situations, we have trauma or stress-induced events that happen, right? And so it really comes in through our five senses. Remember back in kindergarten, y'all learned five senses. So we got the sight, the hearing, the taste, the sound, and the smell. I always forget one, but not that time. I'm pretty proud of myself. So we have our five senses. Folks out there argue that we have more senses, but for the sake of time, there's five. And so that traumatic event comes in through the five senses. Sometimes one sense or more than one sense, maybe two or three of, or maybe, sound or a sight, they become way open and that memory becomes more salient. And that part or that aspect of the memory becomes defined and engraved in our brains. So, for instance, let me give you an example of one of my clients that I had, one of my trauma clients. I'm a therapist and a trauma specialist, trauma expert, and so she came to me because she said, I'm just really embarrassed. I was standing in the store and I ran out of the store out of nowhere and just kept running past everyone. I flew in the parking lot and my mother came and finally found me crunched down next to a tire, those big trucks with the big tires. She was crunched down next to it. And she said, I have no idea why I did that. And this is her words. She said, I feel crazy. And so I don't know what happened to me. And so I'll just give a little trigger warning. I'll get into a little bit of detail of what actually did happen to her. So, keep yourself safe inside. And use your coping tools as you need to. So I said, okay, I guarantee you're not crazy. I don't even believe in that. There's no such thing as crazy, but I guarantee you're not what you're thinking. Tell me what happened to you and walk me through it. What happened and what brings you here. And so she said, well, a few months ago, I work in a gas station and I was working there early in the morning and someone came in and they came up behind me and they put a gun to my head. And I said, wow, that's really traumatic, as you can imagine. And I said, what else happened? What do you remember seeing? What do you remember hearing? And I started going through her five senses, y'all. So she told me all this detail about what happened, and she hadn't even remembered that she was making coffee. She was making hazelnut coffee. And also, when the man came in, when he put the gun to her head, he demanded her to open the safe. And I said, what else did he say? What did he smell like? What did he look like? All of those things. What she could remember most is that he was counting down and saying, hurry up and open up the safe. Okay? Keep that in mind, y'all. So I said, flash back to the store, right? What were you doing in the store before you ran out of the store? And she said, nothing. I was just sitting there waiting to buy my pack of gum. And the man was giving back the money. And he was counting down, counting the money into the woman's hand. Oh, connection. Her brain was triggered. Her brain said, oh no, there is a serious danger going on. So the brainstem alerted the rest of the brain and said, this person is in danger, okay? Because in the real situation, she was in danger. She had a gun to her head. In this situation where she was in the pharmacy buying a pack of gum, she wasn't in danger. However, her brain was triggered and her brain said, yes, you are, and you better run on out of here. And so the brainstem sent a message to the rest of the brain, the limbic system, which we call the emotional brain. Now, that's not the part of the brain where where it decides all of our emotions. However, it has a big part of it, right? And so in this situation, the brainstem said, there is danger. And I like to call the brainstem the secret service of the brain, okay? So one time I had an opportunity to go to the White House many, many years ago, about 10 years ago or so. And there were Secret Service everywhere, looking around, talking into their sleeve and saying, there, whatever the danger was. There ended up being some kind of alert and they ran across the lawn. It was pretty exciting. So that is what our brainstem does, looking and scanning for danger. In my client's mind, there was a dangerous situation coming up. Counting means there's something about to go way wrong in this situation. And so the brainstem sends the message and signal to the limbic system. Now, the amygdala, I call her Amy, is getting all this information, but she sounds the alarm. Okay, she pulls the alarm and says, this is dangerous. We have to protect the host. The host is the brain and the body. We have to protect. And then she sends out chemicals. So she sends out alarms, and said this is danger. And so cortisol, adrenaline is pumping through the body. It goes through the other parts of the brain. And then the brain decides if we are going to fight, flight, or freeze. I'm going to talk about all of those, and I got another one for y'all that is kind of up and coming. So we'll talk about that one too. All right, sends the signal. However.com, the neocortex shuts off. So I call that the lazy executive director because the neocortex or the frontal lobe shuts down or we just can't gain that access to it, okay? And so the lazy executive director goes to lunch when the whole agency is going up in flames, basically. Shuts the door and eats the sandwich, right? And so that's what's kind of happening to our thinking brain. Our thinking, our reasoning, all that goes down there. The hippocampus is part of the brain where it's taken in the memory. But trauma and stress memory is fragmented. Like if you ever played a puzzle and you drop the puzzle on the floor, little pieces are all over. That's what trauma and high stress memory is all about. It's sporadic and it's not linear. Okay? Y'all with me? I know you are. All right, let's go. So the thinking part of the brain says, I don't know how to reason or make decisions or do any of that. I'm going to go ahead and shut down. Because this is a crisis. This is an alarm. That's what the amygdala said, right? Okay. So what ends up happening is the brain sends out the cortisol, adrenaline, sends out these signals for us to fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. Okay, so fawn is coming into play a little bit more than like the last 10 years. So with a fight response, that's exactly what it sounds like. We're in fight mode. We are thinking about how I'm going to fight my way out of this to keep myself safe. That is the bottom line. It's part of the autonomic nervous system too, which is automatic. So it's part of the system that helps us to blink and to breathe. You weren't sitting here the whole time watching this podcast going blink, 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 inhale, exhale, blink, blink, or you would just be exhausted. Your brain wouldn't know what else to do, right? Okay, so it's automatic. And so automatically we go into a fight, flight, freeze, or the new one, fawn response, okay? The fight response, just what it sounds like, fight. Fight my way out, make sure I'm kept safe, fight the person if I can, if I see a way. The flight is trying to get away, literally running. How that manifests in our lives today could be, I am not going to talk about that situation. Thanks so much, but no thank you. I am literally going to get up and leave in the middle of an argument with my significant other because I'm not going to stay here and have this conflict, okay? That's flight. Flight can, you can see people shaking or looking towards the door, their eyes are darting towards the door. All of these are just some behavioral activations that happen when our brain is triggered, when our brain is told that this is a similar situation or there's perceived danger, okay? So we got fight down, we got flight. What's next? Freeze, right. So freeze is a shutdown. It can be a physical shutdown or a mental shutdown, but it is literally some type of catatonic frozen state in some people, and others, it looks like isolation, avoidance. I am not going to go to that certain place. I am not going to even get myself in a situation where you're going to talk to me. I have, teenagers are my jam as far as being a therapist. I love teenagers and adults. And my teens would just literally fold their arms and turn their back on me. No, I'm not talking about that. Or just jump on the floor. My kid clients jump on the floor and start playing. Okay, that's freeze. That is avoidance. I'm not talking about that. Fawn has come up. There's very little research on fawn. I love researching articles and reading and books and things like that. And so to the trauma specialists and the trauma experts, we really love authors like Levine and Vanderkolk and Herman and Beverly. And so those are our go-to people. If you have more authors that are trauma specialists, put that in the comments. I want to hear about them. Yes. All right. Or email me. Want to hear about them. And so what I'm noticing, in my recent research on the fawn response is Walker seems to be, and like I said, there's very little research about fawn, but Walker seems to be that solid author. And then Oka, I hope I'm saying it right, 2020 backed up a lot of Walker's 2013 research, okay? And so fawn is basically, it's another behavior, okay? So I'm going to read my notes because I really want y'all to get all that was there. I don't want to forget anything. So it resulted in sustained early childhood complex trauma, right? And so this fawn response is a result of that sustained early childhood complex trauma. And it manifests in, listen, y'all, in excessively loving people and being very serving, not having a strong opinion, and asking other people, eliciting other people to talk for them or make decisions for them, okay? Making choices, right? So protesting, like a lack of protest altogether, compromising, being a peacemaker, codependency. That was a big one that I kept reading. And so I wanted to read that to you all. And basically submissive, okay? That's different than the fight, flight, or freeze responses, right? What I know about the 4 R's, the 4 responses, the 4 F's, FRs, let's call it the 4 FRs. That's us. We just coined it. And let's think about it in this perspective. We can have these reactions, and we're not just stuck on one. Sometimes we have a plethora of them. We go from one to the other in a situation. In that situation where that event is reactivating us, we have that response in the moment. However, continuing to read the research on these reactions, I'm finding and I'm experiencing with my clients and experiencing with myself, y'all. I'll talk about that. That the responses we tend to go to become our personality. It becomes our behavioral patterns. Woo! Right? I don't know what I just dropped right there. I was dropping a gold nugget. Okay? I dropped a gold nugget because you start to see this pattern of behavior in your relationships, in your workplace, in your social settings, and you notice that when conflict or stress comes up, we have a default. Okay, this is my Dr. Toy theories. We have a default, and we go back to that default whenever we are trauma triggered or in high stressful situations. Okay, so what I mean is, not ready for that yet. I clicked on it, sorry. So what I mean is we have a default. So my default, I'm discovering, is it's a fight default. Okay, I'm a little ashamed. I have a fight default, y'all. And I said, where does this fight default come from? Now, I won't fist fight. I'm way too mature and professional for that. But I notice in situations, especially if you are going to harm my children or my husband or my parents or my siblings, I turn into like, okay, hold on. Or my students. I'm like that too. No, I have a fight response and I say, no, you're not going to harm these people. You're not going to harm me. And I will go into fight response. And I say, where do I get this from? Why am I ready to what's up? I'm ready to fight. No, calm down. I'm telling myself. But I feel that response. I feel that stress hormone increasing and I feel the necessity to fight and defend and protect. And I noticed that's a pattern throughout my life. I noticed even at school, I would stand up. If someone was bullying someone, I would put my body in front of them and say, stop, you're not going to hurt that person. I remember doing that. And I know that it has trickled into my adulthood. I said, where'd that come from? So I did some introspection. I did some wandering into myself, into my past, and just thinking about where that came from. And it comes from a lot of what I have experienced in my racial trauma. Being African American, being Black American, as you would imagine, I've endured some racial trauma. And I noticed that, I went to a school and I had a lot of racism within the school. Not everybody, not every teacher, of course, but definitely a lot. And in my neighborhood, in my community, there was a lot of racism. And I remember messages like, if you get called the N-word, you have to fight. That's fighting words, is what I heard. I was told by my parents, don't go past the telephone pole on my street where I grew up because down there it's racist and you'll have to fight. And it was true because I'm the youngest. I'm a rebel. I have to go down. I have to try it out and see what happens. So I slipped past the telephone pole with me and my friend, and I ended up having to fight quite a bit, being called the N-word and things like that. And then I also remember seeing my parents coming to the school and fighting, if I had a racist teacher or something racist happened within class. I remember them getting out of their car and walking into the school and fighting. They're freedom fighters, they're activists, raised my sister and I to be activists. So we're so used to fighting. I tell everybody I was born with a little tiny brown fist in the air. I just came out with an afro and a brown fist. And I was ready to fight. That's probably why I'm a social worker. It's in my blood. And so that fight response comes from the experiences that I had and from the messaging that I got in order to protect myself, okay? But what we do is we have this response, this default response out of survival, But y'all, is it maladaptive? Do we still need it? Do we still need it today? So I want you to do some self-reflection right now. Think about what your default response is. And do you need it? Do you need it now? Or do we need to make some changes, some adjustments to our environment and to people around us? Everything that someone says, everything that someone does, because it activates us doesn't mean that we should respond in that automatic activation, trauma, high stress response. We don't have to run away from conflict if flight is your default. We don't have to avoid talking to someone when they say, I think we have a problem, we need to talk. And you're like, hold that thought, and they never see you again. We don't have to do that. Or when you get upset, do you just shut down? And they're like, such and such, what do you think? We have to talk about this. Or are you a fawn response and just say, whatever y'all want to do, whatever you like. But internally, you're really not happy about that. Or have you seen yourself in relationships and in different situations where you give up the fight because you want to avoid any type of neglect, or you want to avoid any type of abuse, whether it be mental or physical or anything like that? Think about fight, flight, freeze, fawn response and say, Dr. Toy, this is my default. Okay? I admitted mine to y'all. All right, so you got to admit yours to yourself. And what is that default? And do I need it? Is it useful? Because if it's not useful, why we got it? What we need it for, right? So I want to leave you with some tips. And we're going to talk about these tips a little bit here too. I want to leave you with some tips. They're called Dr. Toy's tips on how to rewire your automatic reactions, okay? Your automatic reactions to stress, to trauma. But how do we rewire our default? First of all, you have to become aware of it. You have to know why. Why am I doing this? You got to connect it. But before you can even answer or ask the question why, because sometimes why keeps us going around in a circle and makes us feel bad. Before that, we have to be aware of what our default or what our reaction is. What is it? A lot of times we focus on the trigger, and that's good. But you got to find out what am I doing? What's my reaction? And then you can say, what am I reacting to? What's my pattern? Okay? So be aware. Be aware. So mine is fight. I already told y'all it's fight. All right. It's fight default. Okay. Next, elicit support from your network. What's that mean, Dr. Toy? Let me tell you. You have a network of supportive people. They're your system. Okay. I'm a systems theorist. I believe in family and friends and colleagues and all those people around me. Pick out the ones that want you to win. Pick out the ones that are on your team and elicit their input and say, what do I do? And I'm going to say it in my slang way. What do I be doing, y'all? And they'll answer, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked. You have a flight response. Every time I try to talk to you about something, you run away from it. You avoid the topic altogether. And so I'm glad you brought that up. Your social support can really help you notice it and help you realize it in the moment. I had a friend to say, now, in this situation, do you have to resort to this fight? And I said, oh, did you just pull my coattail? You sure did, right? I didn't have to resort to that. And so I appreciated that. 3, practice role play. Imagine a different outcome. So practice with a friend. I am serious, y'all. Practice with a friend and say, I have this conversation coming up with my supervisor. I have this conversation coming up with my friend, with my roommate, with my significant other, and I know I'm going to resort to my default, okay? It's going to go down. It's going to happen. I'm going to resort to that, and I don't want to. I want to role play and practice. I want my body to have muscle memory of what I'm going to say and do. Will you practice that with me? If you Want to, you can even take it another step and imagine in your brain, just do the whole scenario. Have a good imagination and run through it like a script in your brain before you actually talk to that person or before you know you're going to be in that situation. Okay? Number 4 is put yourself in position. So don't run away from the challenge. Put yourself in a position. If someone calls and says, hey, I really want to talk about, some tension that I'm feeling between the two of us. Don't hang up the phone. Don't say, okay, yeah, we should, and then never talk about it. Put yourself in the situation. Go to the person before they even go to you and say, I really need to talk about this. Or know that someone did something and it wasn't okay with you. And so you're not going to have the fawn response. You're going to actually give your opinion and say, that wasn't okay, what you said. And that hurt me, and I want to talk about it with you. So initiate and put yourself in position so that you can keep practicing this thing until you get it right. And that leads to number 5. Keep trying, y'all. This healing journey is just that. It is a journey. And so you will keep trying, and you will fail at times, but have grace. Give yourself a break. Like, okay, you blew up on that person, or okay, you shut down in the middle of the argument. Okay, next time, let's do better. Let's keep doing better and keep doing better. The more you know, the better you will do. It's guaranteed. You keep practicing and practicing, you will get it right. I'm telling you, you'll get it right. Okay? Okay, remember, this healing journey is just that. It is a journey. I thank you for taking it with me today. The Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy Social Work Podcast journey. I will see you again. I enjoyed my time so much. Every first and third Thursday at noon, you can see a new podcast, or you can see our podcast, and really just keep sharing, y'all. Keep sharing, because your healing overflows onto others and you continue to heal. Send in your questions for the Ask a Therapist segment. Send it to my email, toyaj@pitt.edu. And if your question is read on my podcast, guess what? You get a Starbucks gift card. Absolutely, you want that. And go to Starbucks and get your delicious drink. Thank you for joining me today. And hey, y'all, keep on the healing journey. Keep on healing. Thank you so much. See you next time.